What's up, guys? Welcome back to another segment of Storytime with a Sketch. Today I'm going to be talking about some murderous Lizzies. Oops. I meant Lizbos. Lizzies. Murderous Lizzies. I'm talking about murderous Lizzies today. Not Lizzo. I'm talking about Lizzie Borden and Elizabeth Bathory. The reason I even know about Lizzie Borden is because my parents sang me some choice lullabies when I was growing up. And one of them was about Lizzie Borden. And it went, Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, gave her father 41. I know, it's a lovely lullaby. Lizzie Borden's parents weren't actually hacked up that much. I mean, they were still hacked up a lot, but not 40 times. The mother was hacked up 18 times, and the father was hacked up, should I say hacked? 11 times. Stabbed? Chopped? The mother was chopped 18 times, and the father was chopped, axed 11 times. It's a weird word. What does an axe? Can you stab with an axe? Do you hack with an axe? Chop with an axe? Chop. They were chopped. Her parents were chopped. But here's how Lizzie Borden's story starts. So she was born in 1860, and she had an older sister, Emma. When she was about 3 years old, her mother passed away, and her father, Andrew Borden, remarried about 3 years after that to a woman named Abby Borden. Their longtime maid, Maggie, said that the girls never really got along with their parents, but especially the stepmother, and they wouldn't even eat dinner with them growing up. They were always having quarrels about one thing or another, usually involving money. And about a month before the murders, both Emma and Lizzie went away for an extended vacation. Rumor has it that one of the things that they were fighting about was that I guess Lizzie really liked pigeons, so she had made a pigeon coop, and the father didn't like pigeons, so he killed all the pigeons. And maybe that was her motive to hack up her dad. So anyway, so they both end up going on extended vacations, and then about a week before the murders, Lizzie returned, but she didn't go home right away. She stayed in a hotel nearby for a few days before actually coming home and staying, at her house. And her uncle, John Morris, came the night before the murders, and he was staying at the house as well. That morning, everything seemed pretty normal. They all, had their breakfast, and then Andrew and John went and sat in the sitting room for an hour and just had a conversation about whatever before John Morris left because he wanted to go visit his niece and buy some oxen. The dad then went on his morning walk, and sometime while he was gone, Abby was murdered. Abby had gone upstairs to make the beds, and that's apparently where she met her murderer. She was hacked right above the ear. A bunch. It was around this time that Lizzie had said that she was actually out in the barn, and she wasn't in the house. And then it was a little while later that Andrew came home and he found the door locked. So he knocked on the door, and Mrs. Sullivan went to go answer it. So Maggie Sullivan tried to open the door and found it stuck, so she muttered a curse word, and that's when she says she heard Lizzie at the top of the stairs laughing, which Lizzie later on denied. She got the door open, and Andrew came inside and went to sit on the couch. It was about this time that Lizzie informed Maggie of a department store sale and told her to go check it out in town. But she didn't feel well, so she went to her guest quarters to just take a nap and lay down for a while. She says she woke around 11:15 to Lizzie Borden yelling for her that someone had murdered father, and not to come in the room, but to call a doctor for help. The coroner said it was clear that he was asleep when he was attacked because his one eyeball was cut in half. So the police came and did, an investigation and asked questions, and they said all the while Lizzie's alibis and stories were changing, and she was acting really calm, and they found that very strange. So she was the prime suspect. They ended up finding a broken axe with a head and then some other axes or tools around it that looked like they hadn't been touched, but the broken axe looked like it had been touched and then purposely had sawdust and stuff sprinkled on it to make it look like it had been sitting there for a while. So they thought of her as the main suspect. That night, her friend Alice Russell ended up staying, and so did John Morris, staying in the house after this happened. And later on, when Alice was questioned in court, she said that she saw Lizzie burning a dress the next morning. And when she questioned her about it, Lizzie just said she'd bumped into some paint and got paint on her dress, so she was burning it. But I think two things that helped her get off were, one, there happened to be an axe murder 5 days before her trial started. That also was like nationwide news. Even though it was later solved and the guy who did it wasn't anywhere in the vicinity when her own parents were murdered. But 5 days, before the trial, they didn't know that information. They just knew that someone else had been murdered by an axe murderer. And I think the other thing that helped her trial was that the juror members were all men, because I don't think there were women jurors back then. And they just looked at her like she was this, poor, innocent Christian woman. So I think that's why she got off. She ended up staying in Fall River, Massachusetts. That's where she was born. It's also where she died. She never moved away. She was ostracized after the whole court incident and everything. But soon after the trial and everything ended, her and her sister had gotten a lot of money from the parents' death because the dad had made a lot of money. And they ended up getting their own place to stay, her and the sister. And they moved out of their original house. Lizzie Borden's house, where her parents were murdered, is now a bed and breakfast that you can go to and, spend the night if that's your thing, because it's supposedly haunted and all that. And her own house that she moved into afterwards with her sister, who her sister did eventually move out. I don't think they were on good terms when both of them passed away. But Lizzie Borden's house is actually currently on the market now for like $890,000 or something. So if you want to move to Falls River, Massachusetts and live in another house that they say might be haunted, there you go. Go for it. So Lizzie Borden was never convicted of her crimes. But Elizabeth Bathory, the other Liz I'm going to tell you about, was. She was probably one of the most prolific female serial killers that ever existed, if she did indeed murder all the people that witnesses say she murdered. This story is from 1560. So some of it might be rumor, some of it might be fact. This is my rendition. I'm telling it how I know it. Elizabeth Bathory was born to a noble family on August 7th, 1560 in Hungary. And she suffered from seizures that some say might be because of the possible incest in her family. Because, they were royals and there might have been some relation between her parents because they all like to just keep it in the family. And one of the ways that they were taught to handle the seizures was to take the blood of an uninfected person and smear it on her lips, and then take a piece of skull bone. And I think she was either supposed to hold the skull bone or bite the skull bone. Whatever, they did weird stuff back then. Doctors came up with some really strange treatments back then. So some claim maybe that's where her idea of torturing young women for their blood came from. Maybe she was just trying to prevent her seizures. They say it also might have been because she was vain and she found that smearing the blood of a young virgin on her skin made it seem young and supple. When she was 10 years old, she was engaged to Frank Nadasdy, and they were married when she was 15 years old. They were together for 10 years before they had their first child, and she went on to have 3 more after that with him. There's rumors that maybe she tortured slave girls and peasant girls throughout her life, but that it was mostly just swept under the rug. There's also rumors that maybe Ferenc helped her in some cases. There's also rumors that maybe he kind of held her at bay a little, and then once he passed on, she was free to, torture and kill as many people as she wanted. The death toll is at 600 to 650 people that she tortured and murdered. When Ferenc died, he left the care of Elizabeth and his family in the hands of this guy named Giovanni Turso, which is funny because Giovanni Turso was also hired by King Mathis II, who was like the king at the time, to investigate and keep an eye on Elizabeth to find out about all these murders. So the first thing he did was go around town and gather witness statements to see who knew what. And what he found out was that there were 300 witnesses that claimed they either saw her torturing girls or saw the dead bodies afterwards or had a family member that went missing, all from Elizabeth. People said she'd take like a hot poker or a hot key or coins, like she'd get it really hot in the fire and she'd burn her victims. She also would cut off their noses and their lips. She would take bites, like literally bite chunks of their skin off their body, and sometimes even feed it to them. They also said she would take needles and stick it in their fingernails, and that she would sometimes cover victims in honey and then let ants eat away at their skin. But most of her alleged victims died from either freezing to death or starving to death. She would, burn their bodies, and then she'd stick them in like ice cold water. She also allegedly would bathe in the blood of her victims because it made her skin look young and supple. So she'd take like big old blood baths, which that's a rumor that I really feel like is probably a rumor because it would take a lot of blood to be able to bathe in it, and she'd probably think that she was being wasteful of the blood. Like, it's easier to just smear it on yourself. I don't know if that's weird to say, but it's what I thought. So Turso says that he walked in on her, caught her red-handed, and, she went to trial or whatever they did back in the early 1600s. I don't really know. But she was found guilty, and she was locked up in her own castle. I mean, she had the whole grounds, apparently, to walk and everything, but she couldn't leave her own castle. And she lived alone there for 4 years until she died in 1614. This is my sketch. That's Elizabeth Borden's axe, with some blood dripping into the bathtub for Miss Elizabeth Bathory to take her blood baths. How funny is that? Her name's Bathory and she took blood baths. Maybe that's not funny, I don't know. If you like my story and my sketches, please like and comment, and also subscribe. My face should pop up somewhere. You can just click it and subscribe. Alright, thanks guys. See you next time.